you can prove to me that this man has the imminent will to launch a weapon of mass destruction, you may be able to convince me.
And let me give you 5,000 reasons why Saddam could use a weapon of mass destruction. They are the 5,000 men, women and children who died at Halabja in 1988.
The real case against Saddam is that his humanitarian record is so appalling that the world community has to insist that there's a change.
If the West wants to secure its own future and provide the people in the area with some sort of future as well, they need a stake in their own countries. Some of these regimes need to be changed.
We know very, very well, I mean, it's happening because of the oil.
I also think that it's about oil.
If he hasn't used the weapons in the last 10, 11 years since the Gulf War, what makes you think he'll use them now?
There's no question he has developed chemical and biological weapons and has them.
What
and also
weapons?
he's
Has he
seeking
got
to
any
develop
weapons?
nuclear
No.
ones.
Have you any evidence that he's got weapons? No. Is there any genuine threat? No.
Well, I'm afraid the answer to each of those is not no. I wish it was. The
On that
answer is
conflict,
yes.
What's happening is that because they are amassing troops on the border, because they're talking war, they're preparing for war, it's now become inevitable.
War is not inevitable, and our hope is that we won't have to go to war.
Welcome back. So the rest of the programme now centres on a special debate on whether the case has been made for war with Iraq. Here's Sarah again.
Yes, we are ready and waiting for your views. But first, let's reveal the result of our phone poll on Iraq, which we started running last night. We asked you this question. Are you convinced by Tony Blair's case for possible military action against Iraq? Out of over 20,000 calls, 19% of you said yes, you were convinced. But 81% of you said no, you were not. And the result was very similar amongst our email voters. Now, tonight, you can join in the debate by texting or emailing your comments, which we'll feed into the debate later on. To text us now, start your message with the word view and send it to 83188, and that'll cost you 25 pence to send it. You can also email us at our normal address, that is www.channel4.com/news. And if you missed any of those details, they're on Foretel, our teletext service on page 360. We are looking forward to hearing from you so that John can put your points to our panel here.
Indeed, though there's no doubt that British public opinion is at this moment opposed to war. Most opinion polls suggest around 60% of people are against military action, a much higher figure than before other recent conflicts. That is the scale of the challenge for Tony Blair. But how solid is the dissent? Our Home Affairs editor, Mark Easton, has been analysing the data. It suggests that certain types of people have particular arguments for and against war.
St Albans, a conservative-minded cosmopolitan place with a Labour MP, but where Lib Dems and Tories have the edge on the town council. Here you'll find Tony Blair's problem in convincing Britain about Iraq. Different kinds of people are unpersuaded for different reasons. Analysing a recent Channel 4 News survey, we've identified 5 quite distinct character types.
Now these are stereotypes, survey photo fits if you like, but which one of the 5 characters we've identified are you closest to?
Okay, bye-bye.
Now this is a likely hangout of the young anti-American, predominantly female, probably voted Lib Dem or possibly New Labour at the last election. They see Bush as more of a threat to global security than Saddam, and they're particularly concerned that Iraqi children will be killed in their name.
I think it's just more of a power thing that America always has, and it's a shame that we always have to kind of follow everything America does.
Anti-Americanism's not unusual. Generally, of those who took a view, 39% saw the US as a greater threat than Iraq. But among Liberal Democrats, the figure shoots up to 53%. And if you're also young and female, anti-US sentiment's even more marked.
Now this is the territory of the mature, conservative-minded woman. She is totally convinced that Saddam is a threat, but she's extremely worried about British casualties.
I do worry about the consequences of war, but on the other hand, I don't really know the possibilities if we didn't.
71% of older Tory voters think Saddam is a big threat to world peace. And if troops do go in, it's pensioners whose loyalty is most assured.
Now here we may be lucky enough to find another one of our characters, the young male hawk. Pro-US, pro-war, almost certainly voted Tory and feels they've heard quite enough. Now's the time to go and get the job done.
They've got to get in. There's a lot of human suffering going on, so they've got to get in, get it done, get out quick.
Our hawks trust Bush and are least worried about UN backing or Iraqi civilian casualties. 75% of conservative men under 40 think a preemptive strike against Saddam is justified.
Now this is where you'll find the mature female warriors. These are women, probably over 50, of whatever political background, whose main concern about war with Iraq is that it'll inspire more terrorism right here in Britain.
I think Mr. Blair should think very carefully, because I think his family will be safe, but the rest of the country won't.
This is a big problem for Blair. Even before the recent Rice-In scare, 57% of the whole population thought war would make terrorism much more likely. Among women over 50, the figure rises to 70%.
Now this is the haunt of the young, sceptical professional. Male, in his 20s, probably voted New Labour at the last election, but doesn't think Tony Blair's convincing on the threat from Saddam.
Among Labour voters, 68% don't think Saddam is a big danger to Britain. If you're also young and male, it's nearer 80%.
I would have thought Korea was more of a threat than Iraq, because they've actually got nuclear weapons.
5 very different concerns, but Tony Blair's worry is that such a range of views makes persuasion much more complex.
Mark Easton reporting. So what do our panel of viewers and experts make of moves towards war? These are our viewers who've emailed in, phoned in. Paul, I mean, you're a former military man, you're an academic, you've supported previous conflicts. What is it about this one? What's the key issue which persuades you one way or the other now?
I'm not convinced that we have a casus belli. There is no evidence being produced that Iraq is a sufficiently large, serious and imminent threat to justify military action and abandon all other methods of securing peace.
Fadel, what informs your position? Because I believe you're largely supportive of the government's position. And you're a North African.
Yes. I would like to say that I'm not against the idea of a regime change in Iraq, provided that the Americans and the Brits won't kill thousands of civilian Iraqis, and provided also that the Americans will engage in Iraq as they are engaging today in Afghanistan, help the country construct.
Regime change glossed over a bit how you get there. What about war?
The regime change won't happen unless if there is war. And I think that I've been saying this to my Arabic and Muslim friends, that the Americans and the British have been putting have explained badly the reason for why they want to go to war.
Okay, Daphne.
I believe that it has to be war. It's a lesser evil. As long as Saddam Hussein stays in power, he's a monster and a criminal. And how is he going to be removed? I don't believe the Iraqi people within the country have the capacity to do that.
Laura.
Everyone talks about war without defining what you're going to do, how you're going to achieve it. How are you going to clear through a country?
Is Saddam a threat?
I agree with Paul. I think you have to show that he has the will to use weapons. Many countries, many powerful people have weapons and they don't have the will to use them. I don't believe he has the will to use them. If you can prove to me that this man has the imminent will to launch a weapon of mass destruction, you may be able to convince me.
Persuade her, Minister. Has the imminent will to use these weapons of mass destruction? Mike O'Brien, answer the question of the imminent will.
Well, can I first say that war is not inevitable, and our hope is that we won't have to go to war. Our objective is not to convince people that we need to go to war now. It is to convince people that we need to enforce UN Resolution 1441 so that we get Saddam Hussein to disarm his weapons of mass destruction. And the way in which we do that is by putting enough pressure on him the only way in which he has allowed the inspectors to go into Iraq is because he's been threatened with military force. It's quite clear that in June last year, Kofi Annan had to say, we can't get the inspectors in. Only with a threat of military force has Saddam Hussein allowed the inspectors in. What we know is that there is a clear threat from Saddam Hussein to the region. And let me give you 5,000 reasons why Saddam could use a weapon of mass destruction. They are the 5,000 men, women and children who died at Halabja in 1988 and the 9,000 people who were injured. He has already used weapons of mass destruction.
Robinson.
Minister, you can't justify a war on grounds of something which happened 15 years ago. Also, the problem with threatening force is that you might sometimes have to go through with it. And if it is not a cause which justifies going through with force, it does not justify threatening force. And I am not convinced that this justifies going through with force, therefore you have no right to threaten it.
We're faced with a situation where the world has united in the Security Council. All the members of the Security Council are united behind Resolution 1441, saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. What we need to do is make sure we draw a line here. If Saddam Hussein is allowed to develop nuclear weapons, then he would be very difficult to deal with. He is a threat to the region. He's already attacked Kuwait and Iran.
Let me pause it
and
here.
we must draw a line here and ensure that international law is enforced, that the UN are able to get Saddam Hussein to disarm. And if we do not, the consequences are that the lesson will be learnt by many other countries that they too will start to develop nuclear weapons. And our world will be a much more dangerous place than it is today. This is the place to draw the line.
General Sir Michael Rose, we've been here before. You led the force in Bosnia, but you oppose this intervention.
I do, because I think there's deep scepticism in this country as to whether there really is a direct and immediate threat which would justify soldiers going and laying their lives on the line. They were prepared to do that in Bosnia, even though it wasn't their war. They were still prepared to take risks with their own lives because they passionately believed that what they were doing for the United Nations was just and right. In this case, we've had an inadequate debate and an inadequate demonstration of the possession of weapons by Saddam Hussein, and even tonight we see confusion. We have had no debate at all and no demonstration of his intention so to use them.
But Jos Bolton, you didn't seem to feel you needed that debate in order to conclude that you want the war to go ahead.
Yes, I think that if we step back from the war itself and look at what we want to achieve, the Middle East is rife with brutal and corrupt regimes, which is a broad way of saying that they are sort of hotbeds, if you like, of potential terrorists or whatever. If the West wants to secure its own future and provide the people in the area with some sort of future as well, they need a stake in their own countries. Some of these regimes need to be changed. This is the beginning of that, which does mean a little bit of, well, regime change followed by support.
Christopher, you are slightly more ambivalent, and you've heard a very pithy account from both sides. Anything edging you one way or the other?
I think my position is very, very clear. I think it's quite unlikely that the inspectors will find a cache of arms. I suspect that this very clever, wily man will hide them in the sand.
Well, some nice empty cartridges tonight could be used for
no,
chemical weapons.
empty cartridges like empty cartridges. That's not enough. What we have to find, what the real case against Saddam is that his humanitarian record is so appalling that the world community has to insist that there's a change. And that's what, in my opinion, it's all about.
But you have to persuade Laura here, who says there has to be an imminent threat from it. He's been atrocious for 20 years.
Yes, it's not my problem, actually, to persuade Laura, but it's other people's problem, and to make the case very, very clearly that this record is unacceptable.
Gwyn Prins, you believe that, and you're an academic expert from the London School of Economics, you actually believe that the government shouldn't even waver. They should be going for it.
Yes, I think the government has a perfectly strong mandate. And picking up the points that Christopher and that Paul made, it's a double mandate, because it is not solely to do with the threat of weapons of mass destruction. If you look at Resolution 1441, it explicitly returns to the Gulf War resolutions, which explicitly speak, as the Minister has reminded us, of the appalling behaviour towards the people of Iraq by Saddam and his regime. So there is a humanitarian mandate as well. And my view is that that is a secure mandate. It is one which has been unanimously adopted by the Security Council. And associated with it, I would like to add, is a very strong moral case as well.
Fawzia, you're a Muslim student from Bradford. What drives your position?
There is no evidence that Saddam Hussein possesses weapons of mass destruction. And more to the point, what makes you think that he's a genuine threat to the Western world? If he hasn't used the weapons in the last 10, 11 years since the Gulf War, what makes you think he'll use them now?
Minister, She's 16 years old. She's quite representative of quite strong feelings in the Muslim community, particularly young Muslims.
Well, I indeed spoke to a group of young Muslim students today and discussed this issue with them. And the evidence. I mean, the evidence, it seems to me, is quite clear. We published a dossier on it. But also, remember that all the 15 members of the Security Council, including Syria, an Arab state, all unanimously signed up to 1441, which says quite clearly that Saddam Hussein is in breach of UN resolutions which require him to remove those weapons of mass destruction. There's no question he has developed chemical and biological weapons and has them.
What
and also
weapons?
he's
Has he
seeking
got
to
any
develop
weapons?
nuclear
No.
ones.
Have you any evidence that he's got weapons? No. Is there any genuine threat? No.
Well, I'm afraid the answer to each of those is not no. I wish it was. The
On that
answer is yes.
On that conflict, we've got to take a break, but when we come back, part two of the debate, do you trust America? Do you trust President Bush? And what would the world be like after a war with Iraq? Welcome back to this special Channel 4 News debate. In a moment, we'll be asking our audience of Channel 4 News viewers, our panel of experts, and the Foreign Minister Mike O'Brien, whether America is fighting for justice or simply for power, possibly even for oil. But first, Sarah has some feedback from you to debate so far.
Yes, thousands of you have been in touch by email and by text message to tell us what you think of the views expressed in our debate so far, whether you have yet heard a convincing case for going to war. Well, Kim, who's emailed us, is far from convinced. She says, war should be the very last resort. Weapons inspectors need to spend longer, even if it takes them 10 years. A text message we received asked where war would stop. Who are we going to invade next to stop the spread of weapons of mass destruction? We got an email from Paul Davis, who is asking, is it a genuine war against a country with weapons of mass destruction, or is it a personal war waged by the Bush family? And Julia Neely wants to know, how does the Bush administration intend to rebuild the region after a war? Well, in line with the phone poll results that we got, we have had very few messages in favour of taking action. But one viewer, who was calling himself Loopfish, emailed us to say, we definitely need to take action, even preemptive action, as recent events have proven terrorists will not wait for us to come to them. Back to you, John.
Sarah, now we'll be back to you in a moment, but let's find out if the government's special relationship with America is convincing our audience of the need for a war with Iraq. Now, Haifat Zagana, you of all people in this room have suffered directly at the hand of Saddam. You're a Kurdish refugee, you're a writer, you were tortured by Saddam, yet you do not want us to go to war with him.
Definitely not. I am against the war. I think the real victims are Iraqi people. And they've been the victims in the last war, in the Iraqi-Iranian war, during Halabja, and they're going to be the real victim in this coming war too. They've been ignored for a long, long time. I mean, I've noticed even with the audience here tonight, nobody mentioned Iraqi people. And when they were mentioned, they mentioned just because of the dossier declared by Blair about human rights, which is absolutely nonsense, because this dossier, I mean, we were talking about it for many years. We were talking about it since 1968. We were the first victims.
Where do you think the Americans fit into this? I mean, what's your feeling of what is their game?
Well, they have nothing to do with the human rights. They have nothing to do with liberation of Iraq. I laugh at Bush when he speaks that way. I continue my laughing when I see Blair declaring the same way. Because what's happening now, we know very, very well. I mean, it's happening because of the oil. Iraq has 200 billion barrel of reserve oil compared with the oil in our North Sea oil, which is 5 billion. And that's the richest in the European country. So isn't that much cheaper to move there and when we get it free?
From a writer to a librarian. I mean, Maureen, you're a London librarian. You supported the government over Kosovo. Where are your doubts on Iraq? Is it about America?
Well, I don't think the case has been made at all, contrary to what the Minister said earlier. The case hasn't been made, the evidence isn't there. I'm very suspicious about the motives of the United States. Is it about the war against terrorism, or is it about oil interests and the career of George Bush and keeping himself in power? And it's interesting to hear that that view comes from someone from Iraq as well.
Jimmy Tate, are you happy with America's role?
Certainly not. No, I also think
that it's about oil. I've read as much as I possibly can, and I wonder where Britain and America would draw the line. What would they accept from Saddam Hussein as evidence that a war is unnecessary? I was about to mention the Iraqi people, the awful cost of war, and the awful cost that could be to us in Arabia from the other Arabian countries.
Louise Christian, you are a solicitor, a lawyer, dealing with the human rights consequences of this conflict. Where are you in all this?
Well, for me, international law is clearly the important point. I'm not a pacifist. But there is no case in international law, and it's no good using the UN as a fig leaf, because that will be very bad for the United Nations if that happens. There is no case in international law for this war. I mean, Mike O'Brien said that if other countries develop weapons of mass destruction, but actually Israel, Pakistan and India, all of whom have very bad human rights records, all have developed nuclear weapons. And North Korea, we now learn, has the parts for nuclear weapons. Nothing has been done about those countries. There was a much better argument there, but of course, as far as we know, those countries are not preparing for war, and there's no evidence at all in relation to Iraq. It's very important not to start making a build-up to war when there's no case. Well, and what's happening is that because they are amassing troops on the border, because they're talking war, they're preparing for war, it's now become inevitable, even though there's no case for it.
Gwyn Prins, you are unhappy at that offering.
Yes, I think that, with all due respect, it's simply not supported in the facts. We have, in international law, a double case, Louise. The one that comes most directly to your own area of concern resides in the Genocide Convention. This is a man who has form to respond to something that Paul said at the beginning, which I think needs to be dealt with. It's not that we're dealing here with a single point threat at this particular moment. And so there is an excellent case. And to turn to the question, John, that you have put to us, the United States has taken a very strong position on this. They have gone through the United Nations. They wish to go through the United Nations. We have, as the Minister reminded us, a unanimous resolution, a remarkably achieved resolution, 1441, which, if you read it, and I do urge people to do so, makes it perfectly clear that Saddam Hussein is already regarded as being in breach. And as you said in your introduction, it is not tonight the first time that he is going to be assumed to be guilty until proven innocent. He has got everything to prove.
Louise?
I just want to respond to the point about the Genocide Convention. At the time of Halabja, the British government supported Iraq, the Iraqi government, and in fact the Labour Party didn't oppose them, because I tried to put a resolution to a Labour Party conference about Halabja. And I've been to the Kurdish area of Iraq, and I've seen the evidence of torture in Suleimania that was carried out by Saddam, so in no way am I defending him. But he is not engaged in genocide at the moment. If he were, then I would support some sort of intervention aimed at that, as I did in Kosovo, because I thought that we needed to make some sort of intervention in Kosovo in support of the Kosovan Albanian people. But this is not happening in Iraq at the moment.
Joss, you don't really give much time for the law. You just want to get on with it, right?
Give much time for the law. I think if we sit back and wait for the hard evidence, then there will be a lot of tears, there will be a lot of very sad mothers. Something is going to happen eventually, I think, and if we actually wait until you've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, then we will have, you know, another September the 11th or something worse in his own country. I can think of no Western democracy that does to its own people what he does to his people. That may not be the reason to go in there, but at the same time it does give us a moral imperative, and the lawyers can argue about it, but ultimately, you know, people have died and people will die.
Let's take some quick fire feelings from our audience, because I want really just quickly to address finally the American issue. Do you trust the Americans? Do you trust Bush, Daphne?
I think we have to in this. I'm extremely uneasy about fissionable material available from Russia. Once he gets his hands on nuclear armaments, God help us.
Christopher?
Well, I was going to say that in order to carry the British public and in any other public, we have to work through the United Nations, which has already 50 nations, the world community has decided to proceed down this route, and that's what we have to follow through.
Fidel, you trust the Americans?
I think it's not a question of trusting or not the Americans, because the Americans are not...
Well, they're going to do the fighting.
Yes, but for me, for instance, like with Afghanistan, what is important for me is the result. If the result is going to be positive for the people of Iraq, yes. And I do think that after the 11th of September, the Americans today and the West in general are trying more than ever to engage in lost areas or in states that are about to collapse, because the Western countries and America know today that they cannot let states to fail, because otherwise you will have Al-Qaeda and terrorists that are going to do something bad there. And sorry to say, the last point is that, for instance, it's wrong to say that we have to enforce the UN resolutions. It's a question of a change in the security paradigm. That means that if Saddam develops this, he can have terrorist groups subcontracted and doing the bad job for him.
Okay, change of gear. What happens afterwards? Complete eruption? Who knows? I mean, Paul.
Well, it seems to me that this can only make the terrorist situation worse afterwards. We have in the British Army, there's a very strict doctrine about counter-terrorism, which I'm sure General Rose knows, which is that terrorism is a political problem and you solve it by political strategy with military strategy subordinated to it. Now, we're reversing that completely, throwing it out the window, and this can only harm our political strategy. It can only make people dislike us more. It can only drive people into the hands of the terrorists.
The do-nothing approach means that Saddam Hussein remains in a position where he has weapons of mass destruction and is also in a position where he can continue to abuse the civil rights and human rights of his people. That's why we've had to threaten force to get the inspectors in. That's why we have to ensure that the UN resolution is enforced. John, can I just deal with the point that Louise made about Halabja, because I don't think she meant to, but she did mislead people. It is the case that at the time of Halabja, not only the Labour Party condemned Halabja, but also, contrary to what Louise suggested, the Conservative government. I've no mandate for them, but they actually publicly condemned Saddam over that.
We'll take that as noted. Right. And I'll come back on a second point in a moment. But General, can you just address these two issues? Divine trust in America and sorting out what happens afterwards. Do you feel they know what they do afterwards?
Absolutely not. I mean, what we're seeing is a flawed strategy being developed by America, in which George Bush, quite rightly, Bush 43, quite rightly said that his main effort was going to be directed against the war against global terrorism. And he's now going off the line of march. He's engaging in what is widely perceived as an unjust war. He will recruit millions of people, dispossessed Muslims around the world, to a wrongful cause of Al-Qaeda. And in terms of what will happen in Iraq after the Americans presumably win against Saddam Hussein, well, the British record shows in 1922 or whenever, it's not a very happy thing to do, attempt a regime change or termination in Iraq.
Laura, has anything happened tonight? Anything come out of here? Anything come out of there that's begun to shift you?
Can I give a simple metaphor that follows on from this and I think shows that I don't feel I've been shifted? If you gave me some medicine to go to a man in Iraq to cure his son, that man and that son, as they grow old, would thank me. If you gave me a gun to shoot that man's brains out, that son will hate me and anyone associated with me for the rest of his life. And that is the route we are taking. And you say about drawing a line, and yet everybody talks about the inevitability of war. What is this line? When are you going to stop? When are you going to be strong and show that you can stop this inevitability towards a man with a gun blowing another man's brains out?
I've heard these arguments before Afghanistan. I've been to Afghanistan recently. I've talked to the people of Afghanistan. They take the view that they have now been liberated from Al-Qaeda, who were running their country effectively, and from the Taliban, who were their nominees.
I'm afraid on that, I'm afraid I must switch straight to you, Sarah. You've got some viewers' responses.
Yes, before we go, what did you think of the debate? Well, the text messages and emails have come flooding in. Bob D from Bristol thinks the government is going to have a hard job making this case. He thinks Blair is being honest about Iraq, but people don't want war and they don't like being told it's necessary, and that's largely why the polls don't support him. From Manchester, Dr. Shahzad Amin has emailed us. He says that war will increase the likelihood of Britain being a target of terrorist attacks. We got a text message from a viewer who says, "My politics are to the left, but we must free the Iraqi people from this tyrant." And Joanne Ferguson, who was obviously watching Mark Easton's report earlier on about what kind of people have what kind of views, says, "I do not fit any of your stereotypes, and with great reluctance I support the Prime Minister's stance on Iraq." And we've had one last email from Michael Kerr. He writes from the London School of Economics, and he says he has a question for the Minister. What exactly are British national interests in this proposed war with Iraq?
Sarah Smith, I just want to thank everybody. It's a frustrating thing. We never have enough time. Minister in particular for risking being with us. Thank you very much. We've opened some windows. We've had some open discussion. We need much, much more of it. Thank you very much. It certainly won't be the last word on the subject, and you can continue to email us, and we'll put some of your comments and text messages on the website. Just a look at the headlines tonight. Whilst we've been on air, police in Manchester have charged a 27-year-old man with the murder of Special Branch Officer Stephen Oak and the attempted murder of 4 other police officers. Main headline, UN weapons inspectors saying they found 11 empty chemical warheads in and around Baghdad. And whilst we've been on air, Iraq has said the warheads are not linked to its banned weapons program. They're stored in bunkers at an army base, and they were imported in 1986. That's it, all we got time for. That's Channel 4 News. Very good night.